Well, good evening. Hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday or whenever you may be watching, in case you're planning to watch the replay after this. But what's exciting is that we get a chance to get together and really go over some very powerful subjects. And the last time we were here, we talked about 10 ways to stop loving the wrong things. Want you to do a couple of things before we get going. Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the button below so that we can connect with you more often, more easily. Second thing I want you to do is to let somebody know, text them, tell them, send them the link, and get them involved with this outreach from heaven that is assigned to the earth. In case I hadn't introduced myself to those who may be brand new here, Dr. J. Calvin Tibbs, pastor of Kingdom Dominion Church. But on Wednesday nights, I'm a purpose development coach. And my goal in doing this is to make the gospel practical. So while I might not be coming from this verse and that verse with the tag, I'm using nothing but the backup of what brought us here, the King's word. So just know that in this context. So don't be religious and say, well, you didn't quote John 3:16, 15, 16, and 17. Just know I want you to be able to take those verses and put them to use. Because if we don't, we're hearers only. James said that, and not doers of the word. So let's go ahead and pray and dive in. Hello to everybody. I just want to zoom into this because there's so much, and I want to make sure I cover it in 30 minutes or less. Father, thank you so much for the pleasure of your company. Oh, wow. We honor you for the victory that is ours completely because of what Jesus did on the cross. And so we stand in agreement now that your will is going to be done. Your kingdom is going to come right here in this studio as it is in heaven. You're going to visit everyone where they are, because where two or three are gathered together, you are right in the midst. And for that, we bless you and honor you. We praise you for the lifting of our hands, the lifting of our hearts, the lifting of our minds. You said that you have placed us, seated us beside you, together with you in heavenly places. And for that, we give you glory. Now bless our time. Holy Spirit, be exalted in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So, 10 ways to stop loving the wrong things. You know, let's just face it. The last time we were here, we talked about five of them. We talked about the definition of the words. We talked about, for example, people using righteous practices opposing sinful enticements. People using righteous practices opposing sinful enticements. PURPOSE. So when you talk about purpose, we're talking about you. We're talking about people who use righteous practices. And when we do that, we're opposing something that's trying to come against us. Among those things are 10 things that sometimes, I don't know, if you don't view an enemy as an enemy, you won't have any extra concern regarding it. I know that in America, we play with or have pets, generally speaking, it's dogs and cats and maybe goldfish or Gerbers. But in other countries, I've seen snakes, and I'm talking about the 32-foot kind. And they raised them from when they were this long. And now that they're 32 feet, it looks like child abuse for a parent to have a child around a snake. In that country, there is no fear of that snake because they were raised in that environment. In this country, there's a major fear. I don't know what's happening in your country, inside of you, but I can tell you this: there are certain things that should get a high level of respect. And there are some things that you should pay a whole lot of attention to. And among those things are things that that are just not flat out good for you. If they're not good for you, why do we do it? Because we get something from it. Let's just kind of face it before we dive in to these final five. If we got nothing out of it, we probably wouldn't do it. Early on in life, I heard sin is pleasurable, and that's why people do it. Well, so is righteousness. But sin has a low meter requirement. In other words, it doesn't take much to eat junk food. Low requirement. Doesn't take much to just go off on people. Low requirement. Doesn't take much to talk about exercising and never do it. Low on the meter. Why? Because sometimes it's just easier to do what we do. And if there is no immediate or imminent threat, then there's always tomorrow. You can't think like that at the level that's required for you to go to where you're trying to get to. So let's take a look at this righteous practices. People who practice righteous practices, habits, they can then oppose the sinful enticements. I think of it like this, and I don't know if this is your situation or you know people who have been or are in this situation. And again, hello to everybody who's joining. Listen, there are times when people have gone to church, and by the time dinner is over, it's as if they had not gone. Their speech hasn't changed. Their practices have not changed. Their outlook has not changed. Their habits have not changed. Their view has not changed because the person has not changed. Why go to church then? Well, we're supposed to go to church to get stronger so that not only can we live the highest level of life, but then we go out and help others do the same thing. And I'm not talking about going knocking on doors necessarily, unless that's your calling. I'm talking about the people who knock on your doors in community, in family, in business, in relationships. And they're knocking on the door of your heart, trying to get in or the information to come out to help them with whatever they're dealing with. But like you, if you are like them, and you're okay loving things that aren't good for you, then we have the blind leading the blind. Both will fall into the ditch. There are 10 ways to stop loving the wrong thing. And one of the things we did was define the word wrong. And we said before we left, we got to know what's wrong, right? You got to know what's wrong. Because if we don't know what's wrong, it won't be a threat and it likely will not change. So let's go very briefly over the first 10 things, first 5 things that we said we were going to fix. Again, we're going to fix the wrong things. Here's something that's wrong. If something is unsuitable for you, ladies and gentlemen, it's wrong. It may be okay for them, but if it's unsuitable for you, it's wrong. Number 2, we said, was undesirable. If you are designing the life that brings you the most value, and you are doing things that are perpetually and constantly undesirable, you might be in the wrong area. Like some people are not made to knock on doors. Some people are not made to make constant phone calls. Some people are not made to be in front of other people at the front counter because they have an attitude, they're nervous and they're afraid and they bite. They are not suited. They're undesirable in that position because what they're doing is undesirable to them. Number 3, there's this thing about being amiss. The definition of the word wrong is something that is amiss. Can you detect that there's just something wrong with you? When you get around certain people, you feel a certain kind of way. Something's amiss. You have to know when something is wrong. The third or the fourth thing we said was that is inappropriate. You got to know what's wrong. You got to know what's inappropriate for you. I said to the folks, several times, and I used this example before. I didn't get to my wife and I didn't get to a 37-year marriage with me watching football every Sunday for 4 hours. We didn't get there this way. So some people may be just fine. Both people in the relationship, husband and the wife, both love it. They're good to go. That's the way that they spend time together. That's appropriate. But for you, you got to know what's wrong. If your buddy has a man cave and you don't even have a man pillow, it don't matter. That's what he's doing. You do what's right. If it's inappropriate to you, it's wrong. So if we're going to look at this entire concept of the 10 ways to stop loving things that are wrong, we got to identify what's wrong. And then number 5, we said, was when things are out of order. You know when it's out of order. You know when you're out of order. And if you don't, ask somebody, somebody who will tell you the truth. And you got to want truth in order to get things in order. If you like disorder, then it doesn't matter what anybody says. So one way that you can grow into the position of not loving things that are wrong is to get in order. All right. Those are the first 5. The other video goes into a lot more detail. So let's pick it up with number 6. We're talking about you, people, us, using righteous practices, PURPOSE, right? Purpose. People using righteous practices to oppose sinful enticements. That's what we're up to. That's what we are doing today. Now, the way that we're going to lock this down, as you see, is that we have to determine what is best for us. And 3 things we said we needed to do. We need to determine, which means to agree, accept, and accept your divine design. We have to determine, agree, and accept your divine design. I'm not talking about what you look like physically. I'm talking about what you are made like in the invisible realm. Real quick, everybody on the planet has a soul. A person who has not received the Lord's offer through the sacrifice of Jesus are not born again, they're only born. So they have a soul. When they accept Jesus into their hearts, there is a trigger that occurs, and now they are born again. The soul is not reborn. There's a born again part also called the spirit of the person. So now the spirit, the soul lives inside of that body, and it's got to come into agreement. That's the reason why the world oftentimes does incredibly well using their soul, because they focus their soul because they are determined. They're determined in an area, they agree, and they accept it. And listen, you can accept your divine design because God is so kind. That's all powerful. Without even accepting his complete offer, because he reigns on the just and the unjust. Y'all good? See, this is the reason why some people do very, very well and other folks are not. And they're wondering why God isn't answering prayer. Normally, I don't know if I can quantify this constantly or across the board, but let's just say it this way. If you have a prayer life, it ought to be working. If you don't, you should start one, because the spiritual connection is flat out vital to anything that you do. I am saying to you, with a soul, there are people who work rings around. Fill in the blanks. There are people who work rings around twice on Sunday. You know why? Because they're not lazy. They are not traditional. They are flexible. They are focused. They understand value and value exchanges. They understand people. They know when to let go and go in another direction. I mean, all these things out of the soul. So for a person who is blood bought and knows it, and you have a soul, and you have a born again spirit that thinks just like Jesus, we joyfully concur within the inner man concerning the will of God. So if we joyfully concur inside, then what's going on? It's the soul. The soul likes some stuff it ought not like. And because we like it to the degree that we like it, whatever area you may choose to apply this in, that's where the failure is. That's where the stress is. That's where the resistance is. So what we've got to do is identify what we need to be determined to do in spite of any opposition. Number two, agree. You are determined, and now you have to agree. And then once you do that, start accepting. So let's look at the terms of this before we go to the definition of these other five. I want you to look at determination is to be decisive. Be decisive. Stop praying about stuff that you should be walking out. Well, I'm still praying about it. Well, maybe that's the problem. You know, if Moses had kept praying, maybe Pharaoh would have caught up to them at the Red Sea and they would have drowned or been slaughtered by the water. Instead, God said to Moses, what's in your hand? See, that's the thing. Determine what you know you do, what you have, what you control, what's available to you. Is it your skill set in math, in music, in writing? What's your skill set? Is it people? What's in your hand? If you don't know what's in your hand, just wait until you do know and then come back to this video. But I'm telling you, you got to determine what's in your hand so that you can be decisive. Because if you're not decisive, you got enough stuff coming against you to just end your quest to be the best. It's over at that point. Number two is agree. Agree has to do with consent. Have you ever filled out a consent form? You know, like somebody wants to go to, or like parents have to fill out consent forms with their children if they're going to go on a field trip or something like that. Because the authority is agreeing, consenting. So when we deal with determination, that is decisiveness. Now we know where we're going to place our authority or agreement. And then the third thing is to accept, which is to be of the same opinion. Now we could probably stay on here till December or a year from now, to the degree that if you don't have the same opinion about your divine design that the designer has, Folks, it is not a matter of prayer. It's not a matter of worship. It's not a matter of any of those things. It's a matter of a renewed mind. Romans 12, there's your verse, and verse 2. So if Romans 12 says, don't be conformed to the world, fashioned after, but be transformed like the Transformers, right? Far better than that, but you get the point. But be transformed, how? By praying? It didn't say that. By fasting? It didn't say that. By making sure you're at church on time for real for a change? It didn't say that. All that's good and all that's necessary. Okay, what about doing good to my neighbor? Absolutely. All that's good. Change does not begin like many of us think. And lest I disrupt your equilibrium, spiritually speaking, I'm just going to go straight to the answer that I got the other day in my heart, walking through the house. Change, real change, begins with a renewed mind. And that is to have the same opinion. In other words, if what your creator wants for you is what you want for you, we now have the same opinion, or we have accepted what we're here for. If you know why you are here, you can know what you are supposed to do. If you do not know why, you can't know what. And if you don't know why, you can't do what. No wonder you don't know how. And folks are stuck in this, I don't know what to do, because you're stopping. You didn't answer the right question. The first question is, why am I here? I have to be of the same opinion as to why I am here as the one who thought about making sure I won the race to get here. I hope that helps you. Now, we're not done, but that's this process, and it's got to work in your mind. And by the way, stop calling people filthy rich when you want to be, but you don't want to be filthy. So that just negates any option that you have of putting together prayer and works, because if filth is your end result, you ain't trying to be that. Learn to recognize that you have authority when you have income. You have more options when you have income. You have more influence when you have income. I'm not talking about so you can buy another pair of shoes or a bigger house only. All those things are wonderful, but I am telling you, money by itself is a tool of use by the ambassador who has it. And without going super far into that, I'll simply say we're supposed to, with the influence of money, represent the group that sent us, represent the kingdom, the country that sent you, your people, the ones that said, let's send this person forward. And you were born in your mother's womb, or came through your mother's womb, and you became a living soul. And now we're glad that you are here. And what we want to do is avoid loving the wrong thing. Because when we love the wrong thing, folks, it is difficult to get the right thing repetitively. So let's go over these other 5 items. There's so much more in here to talk about, but what's wrong? What's one of those wrong things? Is it against the law? I mean, let's just go there. Is it against the law? If what you like to do is breaking the law, it's not a, you can't love that. Listen, I may have some drug dealers on here. It's against the law. You're a business person. I was going to say businessman, but there may be a lady in here too. But if you're a businessman, get in a legal business. Get in a legal business. You don't want to love what's wrong, because what's wrong is unsuited for you, unless you don't mind wearing the same thing every single day for several years. You don't want that. You don't want that. So do something that's legal. Stop loving illegal things. If you're looking at somebody else's wife, it's illegal. The law may not arrest you, but the law of the spirit will get your attention if you're not careful. If you know that what you're loving is against the law, and let's just go here, even against the law of the spirit of life, there are certain things that shouldn't come out of your mouth. It's against the law for you. When you were a child, you could get away with it because you thought like a child. You reasoned as a child, but you got a little bit older. In fact, you are older. It's against the law. You got to put away some, come on, childish things because they're wrong for you. We're talking about being determined so that we can agree and accept our divine design. All right, let's go to the next one. Mistaken. Something that's wrong is mistaken. You thought it was this, but you were mistaken. Anybody ever thought it was this and it wasn't? I know I have, both hands, both feet. I was mistaken. So I can't love mistakes. There are actually people and some type of clinical activity I'm not connected with that involves what happens when people make mistakes on purpose to get attention. I know, and it's probably none of you in this call, but I'm glad. But if you run into people like that who always have something wrong, man, I almost made it. Man, I almost hit the lottery. I missed about four numbers, man. I only have four numbers. If I had four numbers, man, everybody be rich. Somebody else, man, they passed me over on that promotion again. I don't know why, but I thought you told me you ain't been to work in 2 weeks. Well, now I haven't been to work in 2 weeks, but man, they passed me over that for that promotion. See, you're mistaken. You're mistaken and don't realize you're mistaken. Okay, so you can take this to any area of your life and find that if you are mistake prone, you want to fix that because being mistake prone is wrong. We got to know what's wrong because when you know what's wrong, you can then connect the dots with what's right. So at that point, you can start determining that you agree and you accept your divine design. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one, this is number 8. We're almost done here, is incorrect. You ever been just flat out wrong? Yeah, I have. I thought I was right. There's a song that says, if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. That song probably made somebody millions. But that's incorrect. Now, it may be right in terms of what he plans to do, but that's incorrect. Is if loving somebody that's not your spouse or loving someone that does not have, I'm talking about trying to get close to people who are trying to take you out. It's incorrect for you to apply your efforts, your patience, your grace in that area. Now, God is rich in mercy. His loving kindness endures for all generations, but you're here for a window. And there are some people you need to flat stay away from. And if you think it's correct to hang around them under the basis of love, and there ain't a thing about what God has told you to do that is connected with stay there, then you're incorrect. Spending constantly out of control, without the mindset of a budget, without a reconciliation, without anything that says, oh, this amount came in, this amount went out, that's incorrect. We got to fix that. So again, we don't want to love shopping more than saving. Sorry, ladies. We don't want to celebrate or love power more than service. Yeah. We don't want to value or love more getting than giving. It's incorrect if we do it the wrong way. We got to know what's wrong. We got to know what's wrong because we need to avoid what's wrong so that we can love what's right. All right, let's go to number 9. Offense. Oh my goodness, offense. In America, there's this idea that if somebody corrects you, it's them, like the police. And if they're wrong, they're wrong. But if the police is pulling you over, you probably want to do something to make sure they know you're not a threat so that you don't trigger anything or you won't be the victim of some craziness that goes on. You got to know that respect is real. And when you talk about offense, see, people get offended sometimes because they're simply not used to authority. You got to understand that the ultimate authority, God, put in place authorities because people do wrong, so that by their error, those who do wrong, the innocent can be protected. That would be you. So, to that degree, when you talk about offenses, you don't want to be offended about everything. You're offended because they looked at you a certain way because of the color of your skin, or you're a woman, or you're tall, or you're dark or light. Listen, remove the offense. The word offense comes from a Greek word that has the word scandalon. or a scandal connected to it, which is the context of the trigger that causes the trap to snap. And some people have too much offense on the edge, waiting for someone to say something that makes them snap. And when that happens, they love snapping because you do get some attention when you're snapping, and folks get afraid of you, perhaps, or folks are they celebrate how you don't take no junk. But listen, walking around, Luke says it this way: 17:1 says, "It is inevitable that stumbling blocks, offenses, are gonna come." Red, yellow, black, white, Jew, Russian, Cuban, German, Indian, Chinese, Asian, African, African American. It is inevitable that stumbling blocks are going to come, but woe be unto the one who brings the stumbling block. So you're protected if you know what to love. If you don't, you'll stumble all over yourself, and it will constantly be the issues of everybody, but you're the common factor. Don't live life like that. Don't live life like that. Okay, you ready for number 10? How much time do we have here? Oh, just a few minutes. Oops. 10 things. 10 things you need to know. One of them is oops. Because if we're dealing with 10 ways to stop loving the wrong things, we got to recognize that sometimes we just make mistakes and stop loving the oops. Sometimes oops is you let it out because you knew you wanted to say it and you didn't mean to. Oops. But oops is like a friend. Sometimes you're getting ready to do something like, I don't know, overspin or smoke something or drink something or do something. Oops, 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 oops. But the oopses are like a part of life. Oopsville. Walking down Oops Avenue at 1512 Oops Lane. You don't want to be a oops person where everything that you do is on the edge of right. And if you do wrong, you only have a small margin of error. Oops. There I go again. You don't want to be that way. You're more than that. Your design is greater than that. And this is the reason why we're doing this part of the session. 10 ways to avoid loving oops in its various forms. Because we need to be decisive about why we are here so that we can understand what we are supposed to do so that we can improve. That's determination. We got to determine. We have to agree with why we were placed here so that we can agree with what we're supposed to do, so that we can agree with ways that we can improve. Some improvement is for weightlifters, completely different for the improvement that a sprinter may need. Can they learn from each other? Absolutely. But when you look at this, you got to understand your design and what you are capable of, or your design potential. And then the final thing here as we wrap this up is, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And how can I improve? How can you improve if you don't know the area that you are assigned to? Because if we're loving the wrong thing, we can't get improvement, because there is a sense of satisfaction with oops. And there's a sense of satisfaction with offense, being offended. There's a sense of satisfaction with mistakes and being incorrect. There's a sense of satisfaction if you're a lawbreaker and you keep getting away with it. I am saying to you, you want to avoid these things like the plague that's out there right now. I hope this helps you. Your takeaway is to see where the oops is. I think because all of these are oopses. And they're oopses that either repetitively occur because we're all right with them, or we just don't consider them a snake. We think it's a pet dog. We got to recognize that oops, it's got to go. It's got to be out of your life. You can't always be late and blame it on the traffic. You can't always be unreliable and blame it on you saw this when you were a child. You can't keep blaming everybody because there's an oops in you. Oopsie you. Oopsie you. Oopsie you. Oopsie you. Oopsie you. That's a rap song. That's a rap song. I hear it. I'll give you the lyrics. Well, take it around with it. I hope this helped you. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious to you and lift up the light of his countenance on you and give you his shalom. Please be reminded that we are an outreach from heaven assigned to the earth, and our goal is to strengthen the saved and love on the lost so that we can help you achieve a greater life with God. That's our why are you here? That's our what are we supposed to do? How we improve is right here. We just did it. Bunches of videos at on YouTube at KD Church Global. If you go there, you'll find all kinds of resources. Check out the chairs. If you have not seen my wife do the chairs, it will big time bless you. It's still up in the near the top of the home screen at kdchurch.org. We are also inviting you to give. It's a great place to give. Why? Because you just received a lot. So give in accordance with what you have received. If we're your home fellowship, then this is where the tithe comes. Bring the whole tithe, not half of it. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be meat, God said through Malachi, in my house. Test me and prove me. If in doing this, if I won't open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing so great, you won't have room enough to receive it. Also, at kdchurch.org, our website, you can find all kinds of resources where you can give. You can give your heart to God, like right now, and we'll start communicating with you. How do you do that? You ask Jesus to come into your heart, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. You get to the Father through Jesus. When you ask him to come in, he'll come in, and we want to connect. And that's the reason why we'd love for you to text that word, life. You see it at the bottom of the screen. And when you do, we'll start communicating with you and be your online time family as much as we can. And of course, if we can connect you with others, we'll do that as well. If you already are born again and you know the Lord and you desire to have more fellowship, you can text the word welcome. And that way you'll know when we're doing this or when we're doing that, and anything we have that's brand new, you'll know it just like everybody else. So I hope you had a good time. I enjoyed this. I always enjoy coming and bringing the word of God because that's what he told me to do. So that's what we're doing. So look, have a great Wednesday, and we'll see you the next time we get together on Purpose Point.